welcome to another episode of the Big Money Stylist podcast. We are on fire as we start the new year, and I've been doing this podcast for like 3 years, maybe longer, maybe 4 years.
I remember listening to it in 2018.
Yeah, it's been a hot minute, and I keep thinking I'm not going to do it, and then I'm like, but it just really, there's always something to talk about. And you know what? It's not even just in the hair industry. I feel like the more I start like sharing, or I feel like hairdressers feel like we're so alone. Mm-hmm. But really, like, we are all like business owners and entrepreneurs, and so many people can relate, not just hairdressers. I don't know why artists just always like feel so like alone, like they're the only ones dealing with this. And it's funny because like every year, this is Courtney, by the way, you guys.
Hey,
this is
guys.
Courtney. She's one of my trainers, and we've done quite a few podcasts together.
I think so.
I feel like we're
starting to be a regular.
She's a regular guest here on the Big Money Stylist podcast, and I was like, Courtney, what what should we talk about today? Like, we don't typically have it scripted out. We want it to feel pretty organic, pretty raw. And she was just like, you know what? It's by the time they're listening to this, it's a new year. Everybody is like setting goals. And truthfully, what we really wanted to talk about is if you're setting goals, first you must know the ugly facts of where you're at. It's one thing to create a vision board and be like, I want this and I want this and I want this. But if you don't truly look at where you're at, like there's some things even personally that happened for me where like I had some light shed on the situation. I was like, I'm going to throw up. But I can't sit here and pretend like it's sunshine and rainbows if I'm going to set targets and goals. Mm-hmm. I can set targets and goals, and you can choose to go in circles and maybe progress forward, or you can actually choose targets and goals based on where the facts of where you're at to actually propel you forward and get the results that you're looking for.
I always like to think of it as like in maps, you have to first plug in your current location.
Yes.
And then you have to plug in your destination. And once you have point A and point B, then all of a sudden you push start and that blue line shows up and it's like, this is your path to get here.
Right.
So you have to have your current location, and that's based on the facts of where you currently are right now.
Right. But it's a lot easier said than done.
Oh, man.
It is so much easier said than done. Like literally, like I think in life, a lot of times you're like, it's going to turn around. It's going to turn around. And even for me, like this last year, there was little things that I was like, no, it's fine. It's fine. No, it's going to turn around. And I genuinely believed it was going to turn around, but I kept seeing like little red flags here and there. And then finally I was like, it's not fucking going to turn around. Like it's not. Mm-hmm. So how do I need to show up and revamp so that we don't continue to like say we're setting targets and goals and not moving anywhere, right?
Yeah. And I think when you say like, you're saying that like, oh, it's going to turn around. Oh, it's going to turn around. Really what that is that's us lying to ourselves.
Yeah.
And we don't mean to. It's not like we're like consciously like, I'm going to tell myself this lie and then it's all going to be okay. No, it's this story that we have and we're like, it's going to be fine. It's going to be fine. And we kind of
believe.
Mm-hmm.
But then if you look at the facts, you're like, okay, let's have a real honest moment. Let's have a come to Jesus moment with ourselves. Mm-hmm. I was talking to my personal trainer the other day, and she gets so frustrated because she's in the coaching space, in the coaching industry, and she's like, it's so frustrating, Danielle. She's like, half of my clients, they tell me their goals, and she's like, she's like, and none of them progress. They don't do anything, and it's so hard for me because I want them to progress, but like it just comes, and I can work out with them, and I can push them, but like it comes down to how they're eating, it comes down to their sleeping, it comes down to all these other variables, and she goes, and what's frustrating is they lie to me, and she's like, and they're just lying to themselves. She's like, I know what I'm doing. Like I can look at them and say like, really, you're eating all this that you just said you did. Like they're hiring her, but then they're lying to themselves, right? And I think that it's because we believe we're like, well, next week I'm going to be better. Well, I was good for 2 days, but I sucked for 5 days. Well, then your whole week went to shit, right? You can't have just like 2 good days and then like the rest of the week is crappy, right? And that's why I always like teach consistency with like everything I'm doing. It's because like we get so excited for the new year and the new goals. And it's like we're like, I'm going to do 75 hard. And then you make it to day 7. and then you make it to day 7, but then you like regress, like even like you go like even deeper than you were when you started. Mm-hmm. So now you got to like climb yourself out of that ditch. And I think that's kind of like human nature to do that, is be like, I'm going all in. And then you're like, whoa. And it even goes back to like, I think about, and I'm sure you have some stories too, like when I was first behind the chair and I'd be like, I'm making so much money, but then I'm like giving clients discounts, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm doing all these little things and I'm saying, I want to reach these numbers. I want to do this in business or whatever it is. And I'm still doing these little fucking stupid things like giving my clients discounts. Truly. Like I get done with a full color correction and be like, God, that I have to charge them $200, but I didn't have the tough conversation. It's fine. I'll just eat it. And then when I look at my numbers for the month, I'm like, yeah, those discounts, yeah, they added up. So in my mind, I'm thinking I'm making so much money behind the chair. And then I look at all these people that I'm giving discounts to and my overhead and my color, and I'm like, I want to throw up. I want it, like, literally. And so it's like you make these promises to yourself, but you can't stick with daily consistency, something as simple as giving your clients discounts.
Absolutely. I think when you're talking about clients and the stories that we used to have, I would set my pricing around the pricing that other people in the area had. Like, I wasn't doing my numbers based on what my overhead was. I was just like, people charge $145 for this service.
Right.
And so I was doing that, and it was my story that's just like, this is how it is. This is how it works. And it's going to take me years until I've like earned the right or had enough years in the industry to
charge this.
Yes. And so I had stories that didn't allow me to look at the facts.
So this is crazy, but it could also go on the flip side. So we coach a lot of students, and we get in our own way, right? We say, well, I can't charge this because I live in a small town, or I can't do this. Who am I to charge this? And that's ultimately why we do discounts and things like that. But I remember I had moved to a small town when I first started my brand, and I was asking everybody, I'm like, so what do you charge? Trying to fill them out. And I was like, that was less than what I was charging in this other state. I'm not going backwards. You know what I mean? And so I was like, God, so I didn't just like raise my prices. Like, I like quadrupled my prices in this tiny town. And I was like, I don't have a choice. And I just remember there's so many whispers, like, who's this new girl? Who does she think she is? She charges what? What kind of extensions is she doing? What kind of colors is she doing? And I just had to tune out the noise and be like, no, this is what I have to charge to not only make ends meet, but like to push my brand, right?
Right.
And at the time, my overhead was really, really low. And it was, I think I shared a suite. This is crazy. I shared a suite with a girl in Arizona when I first started my brand. I think I paid $400 a month. A month. At that time, I was charging $2,500 per guest to do extensions. And I was like, I almost started working at another salon doing commission, and I was going to drive 45 minutes to Scottsdale. And I was like, then I found this girl that was like, hey, I'll split my rent with you. And I was like, okay. And I'm like, if I can't make more than $400 a month, I'm in trouble. And then as a numbers game, I knew. I was like, I charge $2,500 per guest. Like, per guest, if I just commit that I'm only going to take on extension clients, I am not taking color clients, and I just get one client in the door that month, I made money.
But
right?
You evaluated the facts of where you were.
Right.
You were able to take those numbers and have that data and be like, this is the truth of where I'm at. Well, and then that allowed you to be able to decide where you were going to go.
And that's why I even made the decision after I'd got this job at this really nice salon out in Scottsdale, because I was like, this is where I need to be to have success. I need to be in the big city at the fancy salon, and this is where I need to be. And my gut and my soul was like screaming, and it was like, no, you don't. Who told you need to do that? And it's like what we're taught in our industry. And we're like, yeah, but then it's like, it wasn't even like my gut. I was like, okay, let's go over the facts of the situation. And when I did, I was like, why would I go work there? I can make this salon spa studio look cute, and it's all about my marketing, my confidence, my certainty to sell that person into my chair. And so really, like, it's like, I know the whole point of this podcast was like talking about your, the facts of where you're at, but really like believing in yourself to execute that, right? Because you can set all these goals, but then if you don't have that certainty, you're going to fall back into that same place where you're like, oh, she has doctor bills this month. Oh, I did a color correction. I don't want to charge her. And you're going to just revert back to doing things like giving your clients discounts. And it's hard. It's hard to do that. You just have to get out of the pattern of doing things like that and just make a commitment to yourself. No, these are my goals. These are my targets. And I will do everything I can in between to reach these goals and targets.
And one thing I really like that you said, and I want to point it out, is that you mentioned that once you got firm in what was actually happening in your business, the vision that you had actually changed. You're like, I thought I had to be here. Like, right? You created this vision out of not facts.
Yeah.
And you're like, this is where I'm going.
This is where my industry said it should be big. Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you're like, these are my facts. And immediately it changed your actual end result that you
Right.
wanted. And once you get clear on those things, then you can actually see the real target that you're after. But otherwise, if you're just creating it because it feels good or you think that you should, you are going to run in circles and you're actually never going to have progress and momentum.
And I would actually challenge everybody out there that maybe you're not dreaming big enough. Seriously. There's been so many times in my life where I've gotten to where I'm at is because I said, what would be possible to make this true? Could be down to the car I wanted. Could be down to the home I wanted. I think that we're so quick to be like, oh, that's my 10-year plan, or, oh, I couldn't have that for me, right? Based on how you were raised, where you live, like what your standards are, like whatever it is. So you immediately push away possibilities because you didn't entertain something as a possibility because you don't look at what are the facts are to get that. So everything I've gotten, whether it's like I said, something tangible like a car, I'm like, okay, well, what if I allowed myself permission to get this car? What does it look like? Okay, it's a $100,000 car. Okay, even down, or say it's a $50,000 car, no matter what it was. I was like, okay, what am I currently making? How many more extension clients would I need to get in order to get this car of my dreams, right? And then it became a tangible goal where I kept saying no to and said, no, this is not possible for me to only entertain an idea of like, it's only 3 more clients a month. I can do that, right? And things like that are like mind blowing. You're like, wow. Or even down to like, yeah, like I said, like our last house Garrett and I got, like we were like, no. And then we were like, well, let's entertain this possibility. And then the cards lined up and everybody kept saying, oh, you guys are so lucky. And I'm like, no, we are not lucky. We work hard and the cards align based on asking the simple question of like, is this possible? And how can I make it possible, right? So make sure when you're setting your goals, even for this year, dream a little bit big and then kind of reverse engineer and ask yourself, how can I make this target possible? Who do I need to become in order to achieve this and hit my goals this year? And don't just make it a year goal, make it a weekly goal, a monthly goal, a quarterly goal. Separate your goals into like categories.
Yeah, and I think that's one thing that has been really awesome about something we teach in our education, we do here inside of the company, is we do set like impossible goals and we encourage each other to set impossible goals.
Yeah.
And when we talk about them, like we openly share our goals with each other and there's that accountability of being like, are you setting a reasonable goal or are you setting an impossible goal?
Right.
Because if you're setting a reasonable one, you're actually you're still comfortable. There's no like fire or drive to be like, how do I make this big crazy thing happen?
Right. What's an impossible goal for you this year? Well, first it's like we have body, being, balance, and business. So we have like all these 4 categories that we do quarterly with my company. But like, pick one category. Tell me one of your impossible goals.
I immediately think of balance.
Okay.
And balance for us doesn't necessarily mean like everything is equally working. It means the people that you love, the people that you care for, the people that you pour into, like your inner close circle. And some of my impossible games for that inside of my balance is I want to be able to go on quarterly trips with my husband where like I love the mountains, we're from the mountains. And that was such a thing that we would do. We would go backpacking, we would go on camping trips, like go somewhere remote, turn my cell phone off. I don't have service. And to be able to do that quarterly seems impossible to me. And so I've put it out there. I wrote it on my fact map. I've shared with other people. And it's like, now what do I have to do in order to make that true? What does that look like?
What does that look like? Do you have a plan?
I do. And that was actually our homework, which is pretty cool that we were able to do all of this, setting the facts of where you were. And the facts were that I only went out and did that for 3 days this entire year. And so that's why it seems so impossible. So doing it a week trip, that was like a reasonable goal. I can reasonably leave and go backpacking for a week.
I think sometimes
but impossible is quarterly.
I think sometimes too, like you almost have to allow yourself permission. Like we put these like restrictions on ourselves and then you're like, wait, but why? Because it seems impossible to do that, right? But honestly, if you were like, no, I'm making this goal, this is what I'm going to have happen. I think oftentimes it's just like we have to have permission. Like truly, like it's like one of the things that, like when I think back to even in our industry, a lot of stylists work Saturdays, right? And I still would tell myself like, I'm not working Saturdays, but then I'd have a client that's like, I want to fly in because my brand started picking up. I want to fly in. And I'd be like, oh, I can fit you in on a Saturday. And I remember one time it was my daughter's birthday and I literally like, was hosting her birthday party and everything that night. It was like her actual birthday, and I committed to take a fly in, and I was late to my own daughter's birthday. And I was like, why the fuck am I doing this, right? And I finally was like, I had several moments like that where I was like, I'm done working Saturdays. I have to, like I said I was done. I said I was done, but I wasn't honoring my own boundaries that I set for myself. And so now, just because it was a fly-in, she thinks I'm going to work Saturdays. And so guess what she's going to request every time she wants to fly in?
Of course she wants to fly in on a Saturday.
Right? And that's because I set my boundaries, but I didn't follow my own boundaries. So that's like one of the things a lot of artists might need to make a goal in this year. It's like, hey, I'm going to honor my own boundaries no matter what. No matter what, if I lose money, if I have a client who wants to pay me 20 grand, it's a solid no. I'm committed. I'm not working that Saturday. And you know what that does? It just makes me want to bust my ass even more and market more to get a qualified lead to come in on a Tuesday when I want to be there. You know what I mean? Not on a Saturday when I'm missing birthday parties. So for a lot of artists, it's always like, I have boundaries, and it's like, but are you honoring your own boundaries? And all of them, not just like one or two of them, but like all of the boundaries that you set for yourself. Are you really sticking with that? You know what I mean?
I do. And one thing that pops into my head when you're saying that is we talk heavily on like your mindset has to shift. You can't have all of these new patterns. Like I can't actually go on quarterly trips unless I actually change my mindset that that's something that I can do. Right. I have these stories of why I can't. You know, so you have to leave your house. You have to have somebody watch your dog. Do you bring the dog?
You talk yourself out of it.
How do I take time off work? Is that going to be okay? How much time do like? There's all of these things that start becoming stories, and you really have to change that story. So when you're talking about working on Saturdays, one thing, especially when you're working with other people and you're sharing your goals and you're doing this together, having people help you identify the story. Like sometimes you're like, I don't want to work on Saturdays, but really you love working.
You love working on Saturdays.
You just love working and you can't say no. And so it's not like I need to respect my boundaries.
Yeah.
It's you need to change your story that you
love working. Okay.
You don't want to work on Saturdays. You want to spend that with your family. And so instead of saying, I work on Saturdays, I love to work, it's like, I love my family.
Yeah.
And that's why I respect my boundaries.
So it's so crazy because like I was telling Garrett the other day, we were actually like in an argument, and he was trying to pull the card of like, oh, I've been busting my ass all day, and like you were with the kids, and I've been in like a little bit more mom mode this year, you know? And I looked at him and I was like, you fucking love what you do. You love working. I know the event you're in. It's very satisfying. You come home tired but on a high. You love what you're doing. And I was like, so you don't get to use that against me.
That story doesn't work here.
Yeah, I was like, that story has zero validation. I'm not going to feel bad about being home with the kids. Like I was just like, no. So it's okay if you love work. Like I genuinely am passionate about what I do, and I love it too. But what I'll tell you is be careful, because I think we get so addicted to the high with our clients and the work and the money and everything that our relationships start to suffer a little bit. And when you would rather be at work with clients that fuel you, with clients that feed you, than possibly go home and have a tough conversation with your husband or wife, that means you're probably in a pretty sticky spot in your relationship.
And now we're uncovering some facts.
And now we're like, shit, I do love to work.
It's exposed.
But I also realize that my relationship is not great because I'd rather spend time with my clients. They are more fun. They feed me. But then why are you in this relationship, right? Why are you dodging your husband or your wife or tiptoeing on eggshells? Like the facts are you want to be with your clients. So possibly you need to have tough conversations with your significant other, right? And it's like one of those things too. I tell Garrett, I'm like, if you want a better relationship, then it's okay to love work, but then you're going to have to cut yourself. You can't work till 9:00 at night every night. Then you're not going to have a good relationship. So that's fine to love work. But if you want to love your family and you want to love your wife, they need time too. And that means that you're going to have to say goodbye to your clients. I'm not very needy. I'm actually like, I like my own time. Like, I'm fine. But I'm like, but I do need a little bit of time.
Right, I want to see you.
I need to see you. I need to feel like I don't need some guy to just pay the bills. I can pay the bills on my own. I actually want to be with somebody who wants to be with me. So I'm like, so I need you to stop. I know that you love work. I'm like, I know that you could work till 9:00 every night. I know you love me, but our relationship suffers if you don't get your ass home before 9 o'clock or done by 7:30, 8, trickles into 9, kids are in bed. I'm like, that doesn't work. And he's like, I'm like, and the facts shall set you free.
And then that's where you can go in and reverse engineer it, like you were talking about, where it's like, okay, I do need to be at home with my family. I do need to spend time there. What does that look like? What is the little baby step? And a lot of times for stylists and artists, a big piece of that is respecting your boundaries with your clients and turning off your phone. Like actually saying, I want to spend more time with my family. What does this look like? Maybe it looks like having those boundaries where every single day at 7 p.m. you put your phone on Do Not Disturb, and you are no longer talking to outside noises. It's quality time with your family.
What? You know when I know I get a little bit disconnected? I love my babies like so much. So like I'm so excited to squeeze your little face. Like it's like a mom thing. Like you're like, I want to squeeze your face. Garrett's like, you're crazy, lady. And I'm like, but it's so freaking cute. I know when I've been like working too much or if I'm just kind of disconnected because I just like, I'm like excited to see my kids, but I'm kind of annoyed. And that's awful, right? Like I like come home and I'm like, I don't want to squeeze your face. I want you to leave me alone. I want to grab a cocktail and I want to just be left alone. And I'm like, that's bad. Like, I love my babies. Do you know what I mean? So for me, I'm like, okay, I'm feeling a little bit disconnected. So even though I love work or I love this or I love whatever, like I need to say, hey, I'm going to take my daughter to lunch today because I'm feeling a little bit disconnected, and carving out time and space to where I get back connected, whether it's my husband or my children or whatever it is, because then I crave time with them, right? If you're disconnected from your families or your spouse or whatever, it's because you kind of drifted, and it's not that you don't love them, but it's just because time with your family creates connection.
You were inconsistent before, and you need to bring that consistency
and
back.
so it's like you want to crave being with your husband, you want to crave being with your children, then you have to carve out time so that you continue to have that connection. And for a lot of you artists out there who are fucking workaholics, this might be a target that you need to set. Is I want to feel more connected to my family and with my kids. And guess what? In doing so, in my experience, it makes me even love my job even more. It makes me feel more balanced. I don't feel out of whack. I can produce more. I can see things inside my business, inside my family, like. And that might be a goal a lot of you need to have. It's not like, hey, how can I make more money and cut services and follow my boundaries? It might be like, how can I feel more connected to the people that I love? Truly.
And one thing that, we've recently gone through our internal fact map process, which is our goal setting that we do. And it's very unique. We're kind of sharing the little pieces of it here right now. But being able to understand how they really are all interconnected. And I think that's why balance is such a big one for me, is like you were saying, that's the stuff that actually refuels you.
Yeah.
And when you're able to go out and tap into that fuel, how when you come back, you're like, I'm clear-headed. My cup is full and I can give from a full cup. But if you feel like your cup isn't full and then you're trying to give a little bit everywhere else, you are going to feel burnt out. That is going to be 100% something that happens
and
to
it's
you.
Burnout is like one of those things you're like, why can't I catch up? Like you constantly feel fatigued and burnt out.
Because you're chasing something.
Yeah. And the reality is when you're in burnout, your brain goes to, I can't possibly take on more because I'm already burnt out. So you sit in this burnout space for so long because you're scared. You're scared that by taking on more or uncovering the facts of where you're at, that it's actually going to cause you more stress and more burnout, when in reality, it's when you look at that, you're like, okay, like now that I know the facts of where I'm at, I know where I need to course correct and actually alleviate this feeling of constant stress, anxiety, and burnout, right? It's just crazy.
And then to be able to see, like, we've talked about where you're at, right? Like, I'm burnt out. I don't spend enough time with my family. You're having these stories around it. And then you're like, this is what I actually want. This is something that seems like impossible. And then the little tiny daily habits and choices that you make is what allows you to get there. And one thing that I think is huge that we talk about is like buildable goals, stackable goals, things that compound after time.
Right.
That the more you do a little bit each day, like you come home and you turn off your phone and you respect your guys' time together.
Yeah.
You start doing that consistently, and pretty soon you're doing your date nights, you're doing weekend trips.
And all of a sudden you're connected again.
It snowballs right into that impossible
It's
game.
crazy too, because even little things like, I think as women, we have like these stories of something as simple as like, we have to like take on everything, right? Even down to oh, I can't afford somebody to do my laundry or clean my house or whatever. And then you look at the cost and the stress that it's causing you because you're doing your own laundry and you don't get to hang out with your kids. You can't put a price on that, right? So for me, it always came down again to like a numbers game of like, and something as stupid as laundry, but I was like, okay, how many more clients would I need to get in my chair, or what does my price increase look like so that I can hire somebody to do my fucking laundry to alleviate stress so that I can go connect with my children after work and not be pissed off that I'm doing laundry. I can be pissed off and say, I can't hire somebody. I can get in my head and be like, I can't afford this. I can't afford this. Or I can say, what is possible? How can I make this possible? Something as small as doing laundry. And what does that open up in my relationships, right? And so for me, like, that's how I always try to approach things is like, what is the cost in not doing this? When I get to my place, my space of like, I'm irritated that I'm doing this, I immediately am like, how can I delegate this? And what is this stupid task costing me right now?
And I think that's super awesome to like really analyze, like, how do you're saying that you're doing it, and I want everyone to hear it. You're not saying like, I'm working and I'm going to make X amount of money this year, and then I'm going to go to try to afford things. You're going, how do I afford that now?
Specific, yeah.
And then you're creating like, I need this amount of dollars.
Yeah.
And then you're like, okay, now that I know I need X.
Yeah.
What are these little other steps? What other clients do I need to get there?
Right.
Rather than just being like,
I want to make, I hate it when people just like, not, I mean, I've done it myself, but I'm like, I want to make this amount this year. And it's like, where did you come up with that number? So for me, that's great. But I also like to have like smaller goals where it's like, I don't want to do this anymore, or I'd love to hire help here, or I actually need more nanny or daycare, or I want more date nights. And I've always told myself that I can't afford date nights or whatever it is. And so now it's like, how can I make that possible? So there's these little small financial goals that I make that I'm like, I need one more client. I need 2 more clients. And then it's like, you know what? I need to get rid of everything but extensions. And I actually need to do a price increase, right? There's so many little things that you can do to really like increase your revenue as an artist behind the chair.
And I think taking the time to say, these are the little things I need to do, and recognizing those is what allows you then to have that bigger goal come true.
Right.
Oftentimes we're just like, you just continue to say, I want someone to do my laundry.
Yeah.
I can't wait until I can afford to have
I can't wait till I'm at that point in life when somebody does my laundry. No, make it happen.
And now you're in a story. Now you're back into a story of, I can't wait till that happens. Not
someday that'll happen for me. Someday I'll be able to afford that. Well, look at the facts of where you're at and how can you actually create that for yourself even sooner.
Absolutely.
So
I think that's great to be able to like analyze those things in a way that other people just might not be looking at. Look at your goals differently.
Right.
Hopefully you can take things from here and start to see like, what are some of your stories that you're currently in, and what do you truthfully want?
Right.
What do you really
Sometimes our stories
want?
Contradict one another, right?
They do.
You'll say like, I want this, but then you look at what you have to do to get that, and you're like, I don't really want that anymore. Or you're like, I value this and I want this, and you're like, well, those two don't go together, and that's why you're not getting this.
Right. You're almost your own roadblock.
Yeah.
Like energetically, you're saying one thing, you're doing another, and it makes sense.
Do you want to know who taught me this concept? And he's like the number one guru, but it's Tony Robbins. I went to Date Your Wife. This was like 5-6 years ago, and Date Your Wife. Sorry. No, what is it called? Date with Destiny.
Okay.
That's my other
podcast.
Date with Destiny. And I loved how he broke everything down so logically of like, hey, you value this. These are your stories. This is because I was like, oh my God. It was like almost like the facts of my emotions. I was like, that's why I'm not getting that, is because I'm so stuck in this story and I'm saying I want this, but my belief is over here, right?
You have to change your belief first in order to get a new outcome.
Yes. And I was like, oh my gosh. And at the time, my relationship was okay, but it wasn't great. But I was like, whatever. I was like, just like really stubborn, and I wanted a great relationship with my husband and my kids, but I was like, I'm not going to do these other things in between. He's the asshole. And then I was like, but if you could get the outcome that you're looking for by doing these other things, would you do it? And then I was like, yeah, I would, because I really want that outcome. And so now that's truly how like I approach everything. I'm like I'll look at like what I want, and then I'm always like, what are the facts of where I'm at, and how can I make that happen? Whether it's like with a relationship or with it's, like financially, whatever it is, I'm always like, okay, it was almost like I was able to like in that event. I remember I like literally felt like I like stepped out of my body and like saw the big picture. And then I came back in and I was like, oh, this is silly. I was like, such weight off my shoulders. This is so silly. This is so much easier. Like I was making it so hard on myself,
Absolutely.
right?
We always do.
That's what I'm saying. Like I always, when I am coaching and I'm teaching students, I'm like, you're making it so much harder on yourself than it needs to be. And you just need to give yourself permission to go and then believe and just keep doing that consistently and see who unfolds, right? Like who you can become. But it all comes just like to like saying like, okay, having like a bigger scope of it and like, okay, I can do this. I'm not going to do something overnight, but I can kind of see where I want to go. And I just have to get out of my own way.
One thing that we were talking about and that you had just mentioned is sometimes you're like, I have this end goal. I know how I want to get there. And some of us get so stuck on the exact steps to get there that if one step gets derailed, all of a sudden we're like,
it's an excuse to not go.
It is. And then you're like, I didn't make that happen. This whole thing got derailed.
Right.
Like, I don't know where it happened. And so just like we say when we're talking about doing someone's color and we're saying be committed to the outcome, not the process. Be committed to the fact that your client is a color correction and they want this goal.
Yeah.
And this is where they're currently at.
Right.
You don't have to have your entire formulation ready yet.
Right.
But you just have to know that that's where you're going. And it's the same for your goals, is to be committed to that outcome, but know that the pathway and the process to get there, you're going to hit roadblocks. Things are going to get tough. Yeah. It's going to come up. And you have to be able to course correct as you're navigating that, or you will get stuck in the I can't. And then you have this self-fulfilling prophecy yet again of why you can't have somebody who does your laundry or whatever this impossible, whatever
That's my
it is.
end goal in life. Somebody who does
whatever
my
it
laundry.
is.
It's funny too, though, because I have this like motto that I'm always teaching inside my education and inside my salon, because we get so stuck on like this roadmap. And so I'm like, you need to get this map of what you think, how it's going to go. And I'm like, I always say, I'm like, you're the professional and you work until the job is done. You were trained how to do hair. You were trained how to do this. You're getting in your own way because the plan is not going accordingly. But if you just kind of step back and you say, I'm the professional, I know how to course correct, then allow yourself to do that. Then you work until the job is done. And you're like, wow. And you're like, it's in those moments that you're really proud of yourself, right? You're like, I kept persevering. I kept going. I kept pushing through even when I doubted myself because the plan didn't go accordingly. But you remembered who you are. You remembered who your training. You remembered that you're the professional, right? And this can apply in life, right? Sometimes I think it's like, yeah, if you're thrown a roadblock, remember who you are. Remember where you're going and use that to fuel you and push you forward and course correct along the way.
I love this.
Oh, this is
I
fun.
feel like we're so spicy
We're
about
so spicy. We're fired up.
We
We're
are
fired
really
up about
passionate,
this.
and we're coming fresh into the new year.
Yeah.
We are coming fresh of saying our own goals and our own fact map and analyzing these things. And so it's like, we want to be able to share some of our takeaways and our wins and how we look at this. Because we do look at it in such a unique way.
And you know what, too? It's almost like scary. Like I said, there's like a few moments where I'm like, I'm going to throw up, just going to throw up. But then I'm like, okay. It's like I take a deep breath and I'm like, and then I'm almost excited because I'm like, okay, I know where we're at and it's a little rocky in these areas in this specific spot. But I almost like feel this sense of relief of like, I saw that. I'm so glad I saw the facts of where we're at because now I can feel good about going like, hey, let's try this. And I'm more educated versus just being like, it's fine. It's fine. Like, I'm like, okay, like it's hard to see that, but it's almost, what's the word I'm looking for? It's freeing. It's very freeing. The facts, like
the facts will set you free.
The facts will set you free, you guys. So we're going to end the podcast on that. The facts shall set you free. So if you are feeling overwhelmed, burnt out, honestly, the next step doesn't mean, whether it's personally or professionally, the next step does not mean that you're going to be more burnt out. If anything, it's going to free up more time, space, and freedom to create whatever it is you want. But you must first go into setting goals for 2023, understanding the facts of your current reality so that you can make realistic goals and course correct along the way, you guys. So thank you so much for joining me
Absolutely,
in the
I love
new
it.
year. And we're excited. We have an academy program for artists. It is on Natural Beauty Row Hair Extensions that also teaches mindset, business, marketing, and sales. If you guys want more information on that, it is an application-only program. And I think we have just under 500 students inside the program right now. It's a phenomenal program. I'm so passionate about seeing my artists grow, the person they are when they enter my education versus the person they are when they leave. I'm like, so good, because I experienced a lot of this growth and journey on my own, and it took me so long. So it's fun to see students kind of fast track that, both again professionally and personally. So anyways, if you guys want more information about my education, go to nbr.education, or you can listen to this podcast every Tuesday. We come out with a new episode. Share it with your friends. I'm friendly, I promise. Look up Danielle K. White on Instagram. You can DM me. I don't know if I don't come across friendly, so I'm just putting that out there.
I think you're friendly.
I'm friendly. So thank you guys so much for listening, and we'll see you next week on a new episode.
Bye, guys, and Happy New Year.